England and Japan, folks, this weekend, Autumn Nation Series, squads, predictions, stats, and recent history upcoming. The recent history is pretty short. They've only played 2 games as far as I'm aware. One back in the 80s at the World Cup, and then most recent one being 2018, which was a 35-15 England win. So, I like to go back 5 games if I can, but we can't with these two sides. What is interesting about this one is the old Eddie Jones connection, isn't it? With him having coached Japan prior to coaching England. So, it should be a pretty interesting one. I should say if you're English, well, you don't have to be English to want it, but if you want England rugby gear, check out England Rugby Store down in the description. They've got stuff for the English squad. Red Roses stuff. So, all kinds of England rugby gear down at England Rugby Store. England, they've made a few changes after that loss to Argentina. Maybe to be expected. Yeah, some guys lose their starting spots and some guys are just out of the squad entirely. It's a 5-3 split this time rather than the old 6-2. So he's got 3 spots on the bench for backs, but none of them for Joe Thokanasiga. He was like my favourite English player at the weekend. Thokanasiga had a ton of run meters, scored a try. He had pretty much more run meters than all the other backs that started put together. Not quite. I think he was just shy. Like he had 100 and something, and the rest of the back line had 120. Something like that. So, no Thokanasiga. I don't know. I never know what Eddie Jones is doing. I'm not at his level. Ellis, Genge, Luke Cowan-Dickie, Kyle Sinckler. Same front row as last week. At least that's kind of pretty stable. Dave Ribbans is going to get his debut. Starting in the number 4 jersey. Remember, he was on the bench last week but didn't end up coming on, and Jonny Hill's alongside him. Maro's still at 6. I know fans prefer to see him in the second row, but it's still the 6th jersey for him. Curry and Sam Simmonds are 7 and 8, so Sam takes the spot of Billy V. Billy V's still in the 23. He drops to the bench, so it's just going to be great to see that explosive pace of Sam Simmonds if he gets himself some ball. And also Van Poortvliet, who had a wee cameo from the bench last week and made kind of an immediate impact, is rewarded with a start. So that's one change that seems kind of logical from my couch anyway. Marcus Smith is still there at 10 alongside Farrell at 12. Farrell still captain. Guy Porter gets a crack at the 13 jersey with Tuilagi being dropped to the bench. And Tuilagi, to be fair, he had a few carries last week, but wasn't kind of his destructive best that we know he can be. So some pressure on Porter to do a wee bit better. Nowell and May are the wings this week, so Jonny May takes stock on a singer spot. Maybe, I haven't seen, I tried to look for an Eddie Jones interview, but I couldn't see any just yet. If he's had a press conference as to the thinking behind it, but I mean, maybe he just thinks, an agile guy instead of a power guy with Jonny May coming in for Thokanasiga is the thinking there. But either way, that's what it is. And then Freddie Steward still there at fullback, so pretty steady as she goes. Jamie George is back from injury, reserve hooker, so happy days there. Mako, Ryohei, Alex Coles, Billy V, the forward replacements. Then Ben Youngs, Henry Slade, and Manu Tuilagi all on the bench. All were in the squad last week from those 3 backs. Slade's the only one who kind of continues on as a replacement. The other 2 kind of dropped to the bench. No spot for Jack Willis either. For the Japanese, they pushed the All Blacks pretty close in Japan a fortnight ago, and they've picked a very, very stable squad. So it's kind of an ominous one at the moment, but I mean, it's hard to judge with Japan because obviously they don't play in the Six Nations, they don't play in the Rugby Championship. They've had to kind of fill in their gap with some games against Australia A with pretty much their Japan team, like playing against they're playing non-tests, but trying to just get that game time together. And it'll be interesting to see what they can come up with against England. Inagaki, Sakate, and Gu, or used to be Ku, but they've changed it to Gu now, are the props, and Hooker is the front row, so that's the same as last week, or same as a fortnight ago. Likewise, Dearns and Cornelson, that's the same second row. Dearns got through a ton of tackles in that game against the All Blacks. Michael Leach, though, was an absolute tackling machine. I think he made 24 tackles in that game against the ABs, so proper machine. Himeno, though, if you're looking for a guy to look out for, if you don't watch any Japanese rugby, keep an eye out for Kazuki Himeno. If you follow the Japanese team even loosely, you will absolutely know about all that guy. He's world class, man. Gets turnovers. I remember looking at my notes from the All Blacks against Japan game. It was like, blah, 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 All Blacks attack, and then Himeno somehow stifles it. That was pretty much what it was multiple times. And he scored a try in that game. The guy is an absolute beast. So he's at 7, and then Tatafu is a big unit at number 8. So it's a pretty tidy looking Japanese back row. Nagane and Yamasawa continue on at 9 and 10. Nakamura and Riley at 12 and 13. And we saw Riley putting a fair bit of boot to ball in the game against the All Blacks. So maybe the Japanese will be trying to turn the English guys around. Heever, I think, is the only starting change to the squad at the left wing position. He swaps with Fafita. Fafita had a good game against the All Blacks as well. Pretty destructive ball carrying unit, but Heever is kind of that fullback winger, so maybe they're expecting a bit more of an aerial challenge. Matsushima, also very sharp. Remember playing his rugby in France now on the right wing, and then Yamanaka, another playmaker at 15. So very, very stable side from the one that played the ABs. Hino, Miller, and Kizu are the front row replacements. Kizu didn't play the AB, so he's come in. Likewise, Van der Vault as your kind of lock replacement. Lapis Labaskakni is on the bench. We haven't seen him play for Japan for a wee while that I've seen anyway. Absolute tackling machine, if you remember him from the World Cup. It's a while ago now. Saito, Lee, and Fafita are the back replacements. So, apart from Fafita swapping places, it's, as I said, kind of steady as she goes. In terms of some stats, Japan certainly proved against New Zealand that they are a very dangerous side from turnover ball. They scored a couple of tries against the All Blacks in that way. I mean, one of them was a charge down, which you can't really account for, but if you give turnover ball, look for the Japanese guys to immediately try and capitalize. And in terms of like run meters per carry, like if you do the maths on how many carries do they have, how many meters they get, like what's the average, and that's generally a good indication of how well teams are going forward. Like the All Blacks are generally pretty good in that department. Wales, for example, this year are very poor in that department. So like the numbers tend to match what your eyes see. Japan's really good. They're really good. They've actually got a better record in that department than all the Tier 1 teams. But remember, their sample size is really small because they haven't played many tests this year. I think they had 9 clean breaks against the All Blacks. 9. Which is more than the All Blacks have conceded in any other game this year. Even the series lost to Ireland. They never conceded 9 clean breaks in any one game. So, Japan, very, very dangerous. England on the flip side, love a wee maul. Japan, not so much. Japan tend to not maul it, but it was a weird one last week where England didn't really try to capitalise on that maul against Argentina. They were quite happy to kind of take the threes. So whether England opt for the mauls more against what's usually a smaller Japanese pack will be interesting. Like on average, I think across the season, the English pack would at least have 40 kilos on the Japanese guys, but not a huge amount, but it kind of adds up, right? When you're looking at a pack which is just under 900 kilos compared to a close to 950 kilo pack, it can be a big difference. But we will see whether England continue on with last week's tactics or whether they look for something new. As I mentioned, they've only played 2 games, so it's kind of hard to get a read on how the history between these sides goes. But the last game was a 20-pointer, 35-15. Twickenham in 2018, but again, it's a long time ago now. Predictions-wise, the bookies have got England by 19 points, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm says 21. So they're looking at around about a 20-point advantage for the English in this one, which, given the Japanese pushed the All Blacks pretty close only a couple of weeks ago, may be a bit much. We'll kind of have to wait and see. It is at Twickenham. Obviously, England will be looking to bounce back after a pretty disappointing one last week. It's a New Zealand ref with James Dolman. A lot of Kiwi refs this week, actually. It is at Twickenham. It's a 3:15 local kickoff in the afternoon, which I think makes it 4:15 in the morning over here. So this may be the first game I get up to watch on what will be my Sunday morning, but Saturday local time. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts. As always, if you're in the States, it's on Flow Rugby, so check out a link for Flow Rugby, England Rugby Store, if you want England gear down in the description. Take care, guys, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.